Dan Mullen is doing what? So Dan Mullen, the former Florida coach, former Mississippi State coach, is now helping out at a local private school near Lake Oconee, the Lake Oconee Academy. He is, according to the school, going to be a contributing resource to the football program and athletic department. That's what the athletic director at the school told a local outlet in the area. Now, this may sound just like really strange if you don't have any background on this at all, but it actually makes a lot of sense at the end of the day in terms of location. So Dan Mullen has had a place near Reynolds Plantation for a long time, which is near, I think it's Reynolds Plantation might not be the name of it. I get that confused sometimes, but it is right near Lake Oconee in what's called Lake Country, some people call it, in Georgia. So it's a little bit south of I-20 in Georgia. I realize a lot of people watching this are not, really familiar with that part of the state necessarily. Some of y'all might be, but it's a little bit it's basically in between Atlanta and Augusta. And having driven that drive many times through my life starting in college, there's not much between Atlanta and Augusta. I'm looking at you, Greensboro. But, Dan Mullen, I will say right now, we will see what happens with Billy Napier. And it did get really bad at Florida at the end of the year. And I was one of the folks that said this cannot continue the way that it is. Man, I don't know if they didn't let him go a little quick, but we'll just see. I mean, Dan Mullen was really good at Florida. He was 35, excuse me, 34 and 15. And they won the Orange Bowl, the Peach Bowl. This was not, they lost in the Cotton Bowl, obviously. And that moment, well, for Dan Mullen, it had been building, and like this is what happens in my view, when the coaches kind of become kings or more important. The athletic department has to have uh, some control mechanisms over these coaches sometimes because what started happening with Dan Mullen is it started getting really weird, is the way I would put it, and the post Cotton Bowl discussion was strange. Talking about that wasn't the real Florida Gators or whatever his quote was. He could have confused me. I mean, they sure did look like the Florida Gators to me out there with the Florida Gators uniforms on and the blue and the orange and the fight song out there. I don't know. It looked like Florida to me. He was coaching. I saw Todd Grantham out there, Christian Robinson. There were people I recognized. So it certainly was the Gators. I don't know what the hell he was talking about with that. But then uh, a couple of weeks before that, about 5 weeks before that, I guess, I can't remember really if it was 2020 really is a big blur. But you had the shoe throwing. I mean, I can't put that on Dan Mullen exclusively. But that moment, like from moving forward, was like this strange, you know, Jerry Garcia long strange trip it's been moment for Dan Mullen. You go into the season, um, even before that, going to the Missouri game in a Darth Vader costume the year before in 2020. I mean, like that was strange to me. But I do think he had a lot of good moments at Florida. But the problem was that it all melted away in 2021 with a losing record and a 2-6 season. I mean, the 2-point loss to Alabama at the Swamp, everybody kind of was like, "Oh, And then they a week later took care of Tennessee, and that rivalry, Tennessee's a bunch of cowards. They can't do anything right in that thing. They got their skulls kicked in 38-14. That was probably the best moment of Florida's season. I mean, they were ranked number 11. They were 3-1. They had had a 2-point loss to Alabama. They looked like a real threat, and then they just went sideways. I mean, they lost to Kentucky by 7 in a bizarre game. Then they kicked Vandy's teeth in. Ed Orgeron, I think, got fired the week before the Florida game, something like that. And the LSU scores 49 points on them. And then, 2 weeks later, they lose to Georgia and Jacksonville, which has become like a tradition for the Gators lately. 34-7, they can't do anything, and Georgia didn't play well offensively that day. After that day, there's just talk about how, uh, you know, Urban, Dan Mullen's talking about how he doesn't have the, recruiting. And then Kirby comes in and just says recruiting is essentially the most important thing ever, and then like you could survive losses to number one Alabama, number one Georgia, a pretty good Kentucky team, and LSU because those are really good. Two of those are exceptional programs, and the other two aren't bad. And LSU was falling apart, but whatever. But then to lose to South Carolina 40-17, like that was it. It was over. And having to save yourself against Samford, they lose to Missouri in overtime up there. They'd already fired Todd Grantham. They lose by a point in overtime. It had gotten bad. It had gotten bad. And, just about the time of the Cotton Bowl, there was all this discussion about Dan Mullen, going to the NFL. I mean, it does to me show how quick things can go downhill. And then, like, for instance, the difference between Dabo Swinney and Dan Mullen is that Dabo has not let it just fall apart. Dan Mullen did. I wonder if Florida did the right thing acting as fast as they did. I don't know. I'm not as convinced that it's that was the right move. But, it happened. And now he's in Lake Country. And I mean, I think this is awesome for him. I mean, he has no real obligation. As it relates to time. I mean, what are we talking about? At most 4 hours a day, 2 hours a day. I mean, this guy's been running around with his head cut off since he got to Florida in 2005. That's 16 seasons, and that takes a lot out of a coach. I mean, if Dan Mullen, I don't know that I would call it him stepping away, but I don't know why this isn't as important for his sort of health as Matt Luke leaving. I mean, Matt Luke's a former head coach. I mean, he understands this. So I think it's a positive thing when you got a guy who's won national championships as an assistant coach, who's won, uh, uh, New Year's Six bowl games, a person who's run one of the major football programs in the country, and he is around and is still interested in teaching. This is a good story. It's just not a story that you'd expect. And no, he's not the offensive coordinator. Uh, okay, but why would he be? That seemed strange to begin with. And it turns out it's not true. So that it makes more sense that as a contributing resource to the football program and athletic department. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's good for Dan and his, sort of mental health. I think it's great for the kids that are in that area. They're not, according to the reporting, they're not playing a varsity schedule yet. So this is just really good for those players, family, and so forth. I think it's a good story. It's just a strange one.